When you look at demos, everything seems to be about those fantastic AI agents with many tools. But in reality, most problems in real world can be solved by a simple chain of AI calls. Today I want to show you how you can build a workflow with Mastra. I'm going to talk about them more in this video as well. And the reason why to choose workflow over agents, that the whole topic in and of itself. But simply put, when you have a clear path to completing a task, you should always choose a workflow over the agent. And I know it sounds maybe even like stupid to say, like, of course, we've been building software for like 70 years. Now after AI, generative AI, LLMs came to the scene, like everyone decided you have to build like non-deterministic agents to solve tasks. You can actually sprinkle AI in places where it's needed instead of just putting everything into AI in hopes that it will work. Let's put that on the side for now. Let me first show you the applications that we're going to work with today. I'm going to show you how you can build this exact workflow. This is application that allows you to create the whole book just from one simple prompt. And first you can put your idea for your story in this box, click begin story, and now you will see the workflow in action. If I click begin story, you will see that we first generating outlines for each section of our book. You can see here that we're streaming each individual point about this book, about each chapter. And now we're streaming in each chapter as we're writing it. So we have two steps. First, we're generating an outline of our chapters, and then we're generating each individual chapter in parallel. And you can see that already that you could build this with AI, like agents, where agent calls tools, but it's very linear flow when you first just need to generate an outline and then write content for each outline. And so here our book is done. And we have like 3 chapters as I specified in my prompt as well. But now let's jump to the code, shall we? And as I said, this whole thing was built with Mastra, not just with AI SDK as I usually do. So what is Mastra? Mastra is just all-in-one framework that allows you to build workflows, build agents, and they're covering like 90+% of everything you could possibly do in your AI application. And when I'm saying 90+%, I'm just not sure that they're actually not covering those additional 10%. But yeah, everything that you could possibly like think of, like RAG, all the agent stuff, all the workflows that we're going to talk about today as well. Everything is like thought through. Like when you think about guardrails, oh, I need to implement guardrails. Oh, here it is. You have guardrails for your agent. You need human in the loop for your workflows. Here it is. And it's like all those things that you could possibly like think in your applications, they're probably here. All like memory for your agents and managing semantic recall for getting specific information from past conversations, let's say, all the RAG stuff, the big thing like observability. Okay, I can probably talk for like an hour about them. But now let's see how it actually works. Here I have my Next.js application. I have here a folder called Mastra. That's where your Mastra project lives. Here I have my Mastra instance. And the whole reason why we need to have this Mastra instance in the first place and why we need to attach all our agents here and all our workflows here is because Mastra provides us with a local dev server that we can run, and we can actually observe and test our agents separately from our like frontend. All we need to do is to make sure that we've installed a Mastra package. I believe you need to have this one, and you need to have a script Mastra dev. After that, you can run npm run Mastra, and it will launch a studio. If I go to localhost, you will notice here that we have all our agents here and all our workflows, which makes it super easy to test, see all the traces of your agents, write like evals, test your workflows here as well. You can easily, like here I have my workflow that I've defined. You can test it with your own prompts here. You can see how much time it took for a particular step to run. So let's say I will try to like write a story about Lost King. I will run it. And here I can see how much time it takes. You can see the traces. And you can test and see all the output of each individual step. which makes it super easy to test your workflows and your agents. You can go to your agent and you can like test it here. You can also, if you have like tools, it will call tools. You can see what tools it called. And for me, that was like a big selling point of Mastra, that you have this Mastra Studio that you can run and test all your AI stuff in. I don't know what you think, because I think it's super cool. So let's get back to the code. Here I defined my 2 agents. So agents is how you call your AI in workflows. I've defined 2 agents. I have 2 agents for chapter generation and for chapter content generation. I would say it's like a identical API to AI SDK. So migrating to and from AI SDK is very simple, and they actually can be implemented together. I'm going to show you that as well. But here, what we're doing is that we're defining the name of the agent, we're defining the model, and what you will here notice that I'm defining it as a string, where in like AI SDK, I usually would call as a function open router, do that. And you can still do that, but preferred way of doing that is to use their like strings. Here you can still find here like open router. You will have here all the models. In my case, I'm using OpenAI for now. And here we're defining the instruction, and instruction is, I believe, is there a system? Okay, so instruction is a system prompt of the agent. After that, after we defined a class agent from Mastra, we're inputting this agent into our Mastra instance. Also here we have our workflow. If we go into our workflow, that's where all our magic happens. If we go into this workflow here, and here we're defining our workflow. As you can see, I've defined the description. We have input schema. Input schema is basically the data that you're calling your workflow with. And output schema is the data that this workflow returned. And if we look at each individual step before we go into workflow itself, here I have my flow to generate an array of chapters. This is a create step function that we're importing from Mastra. Here we're defining the ID of our step, description, input, again, the data that is necessary to execute the step, the output as well. We are defining the output of this create step function, and execute. And actually, if you noticed, it's very similar to how you write tools in the AI SDK. This kind of theme of this library, that it's very similar. You will notice a lot of similarities throughout this library. Then the same as with tools, we're doing execute function, we're defining the execute function. Here in this execute function, we can get our input, and you can get many more parameters from here as well. Here, what we need to get is to get the input data of our step. So this schema right here. And of course, because we've defined it as ZOT schema, we can easily get this type. We can be sure that everything is type safe as well. After that, what we need to do is to get our agent. So here I grabbed Mastra, I got this Mastra from the execute parameters here. I'm calling get agent function. So I'm getting this chapter generator agent. And if you remember here, we've defined this chapter generator agent in our Mastra instance. And after that, this agent acts very similar to like generate text or stream text. The thing is that you can just do chapter agent and call stream, for example, to get stream. It will be similar to stream text, or you can do generate. Here, if I define generate, it will no longer stream the response. It will just give you the result once it's done. And if you need a structured output out of your AI call, all you need to do is to, in parameters in your agent here, you can define the structured output, and it works the same way as like generate object function. You define the schema with ZOT, and after that, it turns into a structured output, and you can be sure that it's type safe. After that, what we need to do is to stream this object back to our client. And so here for that, we have a writer, the same way as we have in AI SDK, we have a writer, and you can define custom chunks that you want to send to the client. Here we've defined ID of our writer, which is important to be a unique ID. the type of our writer. In my case, it's data chapter generation. After that, I have my data where I define the status. In my case, it's streaming because once after that, I'm defining the data here. I'm defining the status, which is in my case streaming because I'm in the loop, which means that we're streaming those chunks to the front end. After that, here once we completed our streaming, we're marking it as completed and giving the final object to the front end. The problem that I have with Mastra, and that's probably the only problem that I noticed while working with it, it is not as type safe as I would like it to be. So here I have to define this data as you can see here, chapter generation event data. And I'm defining a separate type for this. And that's a workaround to get somewhat a decent type safety between your front end and the back end. And we're going to get to the front end as well. But there is no way for you to create like a type similar as you can do with AI SDK, starting from the version 5, where you can define a UI message with custom data parts and type them. But that's the only thing that I noticed, that sometimes you have to like duplicate types in some places and you have to find workaround to get as much type safety as possible. After our loop is done, after that, we're getting a final result, response.object. It's the same as in the SDK as well, passing it into our writer, marking it as completed, and then we're returning chapters generated from our AI to the next step. So as I said, you have to define an output schema here. In my case, it's chapter information. And that's what I'm returning here. So I'm returning an array of chapters. The next step after we created an array of our chapters, we need to generate content for each chapter, and we're doing it in parallel. So here we have our step, the same thing. I forgot to delete this step schema because I was testing. So here I have a description as well, input schema, output schema, same thing as with the previous one. And the input schema here in this step is basically the output of the previous step, but not like an array, because as I said, we're doing it in parallel. So we have to loop over to create those in parallel. So this step is going to be just a singular, here's input schema is going to be just a singular chapter, not an array of chapter. And so here again, we are doing execute. We're getting our input data, Mastra, writer, getting all the input schema or input data, getting our agent. And I don't remember if I told you why we define it as an agent, but the reason for that is that we can observe it. And observability is a big thing in Mastra. The reason why we want this agent is we can easily log that in our dashboard and test it and see how much time it took, traces, and to see how this particular agent performs. And of course, you still can use like AI SDK here if you want to, but then you lose observability that you wouldn't want to have in your workflows. So keep that in mind as well. After that, it's the same thing. We're getting our agent, doing stream, and passing down all the like information that we got from our previous step, like what type of characters should be in our story, in our chapter, what settings, emotional tone of this chapter, key events of this chapter, and so on. And what we're doing after that is, again, we're defining the ID, which is important for it to be unique. And we're passing the same thing. We're defining our writer. Now it's data chapter content generation. And we're defining data with the same status, streaming, content, chapter number, title. And here again, I'm doing as and defining my type here. After that, once the loop is completed, we're doing writer write and defining the status completed and returning it to the next step. In our case, we don't have a next step, but you can imagine that you can go on and on with this. Here, what we need to do to actually define steps, we need to call then generate step, which means that like it will call this step as a first one. And so that's how you define steps in your workflow. You need to call on your workflow then, pass your defined step. After that, we're doing for each, which means that we need to go through our like chapters and generate them. But as I said, we need to do it in parallel. And Mastra allows us to do it through And Mastra allows us to do it through concurrency. Here we can define like how many steps we can call in parallel. In my case, I just defined 10 because it's maximum amount of chapters that you can generate like at one time. And after that, we need to commit just to like wrap up the workflow. And it's a very simple workflow, but you can do branching. If I go to Mastra, you can like branch out here, for example, if the value is more than 10, take the step A and etc. So you can build more complicated workflows. You can also like do different looping techniques, do while. You can do other looping techniques as well. I just showed you for each, but you can do while, you can do until, and you can build wild things with this. And the question that got stuck in my mind is, why do we even need to build like those create workflows, create step? And you might have the similar question. But as I understand, the reason for that is mostly observability. We want to see this workflow in our dashboard and master dashboard to test it, to see and trace it better. And that's why they need like create workflows, create steps, and things like this. So going back to our code, let's go to the front end now. Let's start from the API route. That's how we call our workflow from the front end. It's just a simple Next.js route. And here we're importing our Mastra instance from our folder. Here we're getting our workflow. So here we can do like get workflow and define our workflow. In my case, it's just one story workflow. You can do the same for agents. And there are two ways of using Mastra. In my case, I'm using Next.js and routes, but they also are actually if you try to do npm run Mastra, for example, you will see that it also has an API, so you can call directly a Mastra, and they are starting a HONO server under the hood. Yeah, probably here, you can in the server, you can define API routes, yeah. And you can like create handler and build your API here for your agents. I'm not really into it. I'm more like a guy who wants to just use it as a framework and import into my backend and use it like that. But you can easily do it and make it as a separate API. So here we're getting our workflow, as I said, in our route. Then we're creating a run of our workflow. This is necessary for us to, in case if we have a human in the loop in our workflow, so we can resume them. They have like run.id, I believe, or run ID. And based on that run ID, you can retrieve workflow from your database, for example. And they're also like master handling this for you. But that's topic probably, again, for the separate video. After that, we're doing run.stream, and we're providing input data here. I wonder if they have something here as well. No. Okay. After that, we're defining input data here. We're defining our user prompt that user typed and the number of chapters that they've selected. After that, you will notice something very interesting is that we're using AI SDK. And the reason for that is that you can actually use them together, because you can transform stream from Mastra into AI SDK format, so in their like parts format, and use the same chat, for example, on the front end. That's it for the whole route. Let's go to the front end. If we go to the page, that's the main page where everything is happening. I've defined a custom hook for workflows. I have a hook called use story workflow, and you will notice that's the hacky part of this application, is that I'm still using use chat from AI SDK. I'm still defining everything the same way, like transport. I'm defining the API route, my story workflow, but now I'm doing like prepare send message request. I'm getting those messages. I'm getting the last message, which is going to be the user message in my case, because user can only send one message to our like workflow. We're getting the user text, so finding by the type text, getting the text. And also I included the number of chapters as well. If we go to send function, that what happens when you click send this function. So what we're doing here, we're also providing number of chapters here as a custom like data part to our messages, just to not mess around with like refs and trying to pass this ID somehow here as well. So we're just putting it into the message part. I know it feels hacky, bear with me. And in our use chat here, And then, then we're getting our number of chapters and passing those user prompt and number of chapters to the body, and getting those, again, user prompt and number of chapters from the request JSON in our post request. And the reason why I decided to even use chat, because it's not even a chat. Why would you use chat for that? Is because chat is a very compelling hook, and they're handling like status, error, the stop condition. And I tried to mess around with implementing my own stream handling implementation, and it got messy very fast, and I couldn't find a way to make it like cleaner. So I decided to just use a chat hook. And another reason for that is that we can actually define types for our messages for our workflow. Remember when I said that not everything is type safe in Mastra? That's why I decided to use chat, is because we can pass down the custom UI message. And if we go to our UI message, and here my UI message, and this UI message, you can define multiple like generic values, where first is metadata, then data parts, and then tools. In my case, I only care about data parts, custom data parts that you can actually add types to. If you remember, in our workflow, we have two steps, which is chapter generation and chapter content generation, and providing the same types as we did here in data. Important part here is that I've defined this data, and you might notice that in our types here, I don't have this data. The reason for that is UI message type AI SDK adds this data prefix automatically, so you don't need to add this here. And the question, why not just use this workflow data type, is because you don't really know like which steps you have there, because it's not type safety, and defining your like custom data parts provides you somewhat type safety to your application. And I think when you have a lot of workflows, it's like non-negotiable, at least for me. You can also see here that we have output, which is going to be basically an output of your steps. You will have there inside of the workflows, you will have each of your steps, and there you will have output of each, sorry, not here in the output, but here in steps. You will have in the result, you will see the input of the step, and you will see the output of the step. The problem is that I've already created an issue for this, but you cannot really stream right now data from your steps by trying to pipe to this data to the writer. So so in ideal world, you would do something like this, where you define a response dot text stream dot pipe to, and you would pipe to this whole stream like directly to the writer without you needing to like define all this ID types and all this stuff. And it works in their dashboard, but I tried it, and for some reason in Next.js it didn't work for me. So I created an issue. We'll see if they will solve it. Probably they will. About the issue that I opened about the pipe 2 thing, Mastra team is already on it, and I'm going to leave a link to this issue in the description if you want to keep track of this issue. But they have already provided workarounds. So if you're interested in that solution, please go into the description and see the issue and their workaround to make it work. But they're probably gonna continue like investigating some issues. Just wanted to mention that Mastra team is already working on it. If we go to our hook, use story hook, yeah. Again, as I said, it feels hacky because you don't have a chat, but you're trying to use like this use chat from a SDK. But for me, to be honest, DX of it is much better this way than trying to make your custom stream handling thing. And it's even not that bad. It's like 60 lines of code. What we're doing next is we have the send function. As I said, we have reset to just remove all the messages, and we have the workflow, and the workflow is basically the last message of the assistant. When your workflow starts, you just have another message in your like history that is going to be assistant message, which is going to be the workflow. And that's what I'm trying to get here from our like message history. And after that, we're just returning. We have a few things here from our hook. We're returning the send, status, stop, workflow, reset, and that's pretty much it. It's a short hook. It's hacky hook, but it works. And if we go back to our page, after that, all we're doing is just using the data from this workflow. We're getting the workflow. After that, all we're doing is that rendering based of what we have in the types. So here, for example, in use effect, I have, I'm getting the chapters outline. I'm getting the type, the data part for chapters generation. I'm getting those chapter outlines if we have them. If we don't have them, just returning. If we have them, based on the status, we're showing different app states. In my case, it's outlining. If it's streaming, then we're showing outlining. And if it's completed, then we're showing the book state, because we finished our chapter outlines and now we need to show the book itself. And after that, all that's happening here is we're just rendering based on the app state, providing all the necessary data to our components, like storybook. Like a storybook, for example, is just, we're just rendering text with like some pagination for pages, and that's pretty much it. That's pretty much it for this component. For like outline, the same thing. We're just rendering all the chapters, all the data from the chapters, and again, it's all type safe because we did a few hacky things, but we can do like chapters dot, let's say first 0 chapter, and here you can see that we have premise, we have setting, we have title, we have emotional tone and other things as well. So I think this like hacky hook worth it. I'm proud of it. To be honest, I like it, even though like, yeah, it feels hacky. That's probably the whole application. I really enjoyed Mastra and I'm gonna work with it more. And for my next projects, I for sure gonna use Mastra, just because of the simplicity that it provides for testing your agents, for your testing your workflows. You also can do like evaluations here as well. You can write evals for your agents if you need to. Like you can define evals. What? Like everything is observable. You can see everything that's happening in your application and you can test that, which is like, I think it's huge for me, and it's probably should be huge for you as well. That being said, of course, it's still in beta. It has some of its gotchas. It's okay. It's a young framework. It's only like been out for a year or so. If you found this helpful and you have any other suggestions to what I should build, let me know in the comments and I'll see you in the next one.